There is a strange paradox at the heart of human life. We spend so much of our energy chasing what we believe will make us happy: more success, more security, more recognition, more love. Yet the harder we grasp for it, the more it slips through our fingers. It's as if we're trying to hold sunlight in our hands, only to watch it spill through the cracks. The Buddha saw this clearly over 2,500 years ago. He saw that people were endlessly running in circles, longing for something permanent in a world that is always changing. It was not because we are foolish or weak, but because we are human. We are born into a world of desire, fear, and uncertainty. And our suffering doesn't come only from pain. It comes from the way we resist reality, the way we cling to what will inevitably pass away. Imagine this: you wake up tomorrow to find that every relationship, every possession, every aspect of your life will one day vanish. It steps not a hypothetical, it steps a fact. For most of us, this thought is terrifying. For the Buddha, it was liberating, because when we see impermanence clearly, we stop trying to fight it and begin to live fully in the flow of life. From his moment of awakening under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha devoted his life to understanding the causes of suffering and the path to freedom. His teachings are not about withdrawing from life, but engaging with it more deeply, more consciously, more compassionately. In this video, we're going to explore 10 life lessons from the Buddha, timeless insights that are not abstract doctrines, but living truths you can carry into your daily life. We will walk through them slowly, not as commandments, but as mirrors, reflecting the ways we think, act, and relate to the world. By the end, you'll see that these are not just lessons from an ancient sage. They are invitations to live with clarity in a noisy world, to meet change without fear, and to love without holding on too tightly. The Buddha didn't ask for followers, he asked for seekers. And if you're here, it means you've already begun the search. Suffering is part of the human condition, but it is not the end of the story. It begins with a man who had everything. Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would become the Buddha, was born into privilege. His father, determined to shield him from life's harshness, surrounded him with luxury. Inside the palace walls, there was no illness, no old age, no death, only youth, beauty, and comfort. It was a carefully curated world where pain did not exist, or so it seemed. One day, Siddhartha left the palace, and in that single journey, the illusion shattered. He saw an old man, hunched and frail. He saw a sick man, racked with suffering, and he saw a funeral procession, the stillness of a body no longer breathing. For the first time, he realized this is life. To live is to encounter aging, illness, loss, and death. No one escapes it. This moment, known in Buddhist tradition as the Four Sights, planted the seed of his awakening. It was not a morbid discovery, but an honest one. Suffering is not a personal failure, it is woven into existence. And yet, we spend so much of our lives pretending it isn't there. We tell ourselves, once I get this job, once I find the right person, once I solve this one problem, then I'll be happy forever. But life does not work like that. The Buddha called this truth dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but it's deeper. It's the sense of unsatisfactoriness that underlies even our happiest moments. The sweetness of a summer evening is tinged with the knowledge that it will end. The thrill of achievement fades. The people we love will one day be gone. Philosophers in the West saw this too. The Stoic Epictetus taught that we suffer not simply because of what happens, but because of our expectations, because we demand that life give us only pleasure and never pain. This is why the first step toward wisdom is not to escape suffering, but to see it clearly. But here's the crucial part. The Buddha did not stop here. He did not say, life is suffering, and that's all there is. He said, yes, life contains suffering, but there is a way to live with it, even to transform it. In fact, this acceptance is the doorway to freedom, because when we stop resisting what is, we can begin to work with it. So the question becomes, if suffering is part of being human, how can we walk through life with open eyes and an open heart without being crushed by it? That's where the second insight begins, seeing the root of much of our suffering in the quiet chains of attachment. Attachment is the silent architect of our suffering. There's a story from the Buddha's life about a woman named Kisa Gotami. She was young when she lost her only child. Overwhelmed by grief, she wandered through her village, carrying the lifeless body in her arms, begging anyone she met for medicine that could bring him back. People pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone told her to go to the Buddha. Perhaps he could do something. When she found him, he listened with compassion. Then he told her, I can help you, but first you must bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one has died. Relieved, she set off at once, but from house to house the answer was the same. Yes, they could give her mustard seeds, but every family had lost someone, a father, a mother, a child, a friend. By the time she returned to the Buddha, she understood. Her grief was not unique. Death touches every home. She buried her child that day, not because she no longer loved him, but because she had seen the truth clinging could not bring him back. This is the heart of the Buddha's teaching on tanha, craving or attachment. It's not love itself that causes suffering, but the way we try to hold on to people, experiences, and identities as if they could stay forever. We want the warmth of a moment to be permanent, but life is like water. You can hold it for a while, but eventually it slips through your fingers. Modern psychology echoes this truth. Research on loss, resilience, and happiness shows that it's not the absence of pain that defines our well being, but our ability to adapt, to release what can't be held without losing our capacity for love. Attachment, when rigid, turns love into possession. It says, you must stay as you are because I need you this way. But life will not obey that demand. The Buddha's path is not about becoming detached in the sense of being cold or uncaring. It's about practicing a different kind of relationship, one where you can fully appreciate something while it's here, without being destroyed when it changes or goes away. This is what he meant by non attachment, not indifference, but freedom. It's easy to see this in theory, but living it is another matter. So the question becomes, how do we change our relationship to reality itself? How do we see the world in a way that loosens the grip of suffering? This leads us to the next insight, one that begins in the mind and shapes everything that follows. Attachment is the silent architect of our suffering. There's a story from the Buddha's life about a young woman named Kisa Gautami. She was a wife, a mother, and for a brief moment, she thought she understood the shape of her life. Her days were ordinary, meals cooked, chores done, laughter shared in the small home she kept. And then, in one afternoon, everything changed. Her only child fell sick. Within days, the child was gone, but Kiza could not accept it. She could not let her mind wrap itself around a world where her child no longer breathed, and so she wandered through her village, carrying the small, lifeless body in her arms, knocking on door after door, begging for medicine that could bring him back. The neighbors pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone told her, "Go to the Buddha. If anyone can help you, it will be him." When she found him, she poured out her grief in desperate, tangled words. She did not need philosophy, she said. She needed her son returned to her arms. The Buddha listened quietly. Then he said, "I can help you, but first you must bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Relief flooded her. Surely there was such a house somewhere. She set off at once. But in every home she visited, the answer was the same. Yes, they had mustard seeds, but death had also come to them, to a father, a mother, a child, a friend. House after house, story after story, the truth began to press in on her. Her pain was not unique. Death had walked into every doorway, just as it had entered her own. By the time she returned to the Buddha, she was not holding her child. She had buried him, not because she no longer loved him, but because she had understood. She had seen that clinging could not bring him back. She had entered the river of grief and let herself be carried forward. This is the heart of the Buddha's teaching on tanha, craving, or attachment. It is not love itself that causes suffering. Love is the pulse of life. What causes suffering is the way we cling to the form of things, the way we try to make people, moments, and identities stay exactly as they are, forever. We want the warmth of a summer evening to last all year. We want a relationship to never shift, a body to never age, a moment of joy to remain suspended in time. But life is not still. It is like water. You can cup it in your hands for a while, but eventually it slips through your fingers. Modern psychology has reached a similar conclusion. Research into grief, resilience, and happiness suggests that it's not the presence or absence of pain that defines our well being, but our relationship to change. When we rigidly attach ourselves to one outcome, one identity, one version of the world, we are crushed when it shifts. But when we meet life with openness, when we can let go without closing our hearts, we can move through change without losing the capacity to love. This is why the Buddha's teaching is often misunderstood. Non attachment is not coldness. It is not detachment in the sense of shutting down feelings or withdrawing from life. It is a more daring thing to love deeply fully without trying to own or freeze the object of your love. It says, "I will love you as you are, for as long as you are here, and when you change or when you go, I will still carry the love, but I will not fight the river of life." This kind of freedom is not won overnight. It requires mindfulness, patience, and an honest look at our own patterns. We can begin by noticing the moments when we say, in words or in silence, "Stay, don't sit, change." We can notice the knot of fear that forms when we imagine loss, and instead of tightening our grip, we can practice opening it, even if just a little. The truth is, attachment will always try to pull us back into clinging. That is human. But each time we loosen the hold, we suffer less. Each time we give ourselves a little more space to breathe. And so the question becomes, if the chains of attachment are in the mind, what would happen if we transform the mind itself? That is where the next insight begins, with the recognition that the mind is not just a witness to reality, it is the architect of it. The mind shapes reality. The Buddha once said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." At first, that might sound like poetry, but if you sit with it, you realize he was not speaking metaphorically. He was describing a truth about how we experience reality itself. Imagine two travelers walking the same mountain path. One is exhausted, sore, and cursing the steep climb. Every rock in the road feels like a personal insult. The other feels the same burning in the legs, the same sweat on the skin, but sees the climb as part of the adventure. Same mountain, same weather, same distance. Two entirely different worlds. The difference is not in the path, but in the mind that walks it. This is the essence of Sita, the mind's role in shaping our experience. The Buddha understood that reality is not simply what happens out there. It is filtered, interpreted, and colored by the thoughts, emotions, and beliefs within us. In other words, we don't just live in the world, we live in the stories we tell ourselves about the world. Modern neuroscience now confirms this. The brain is not a passive recorder of events, it's an active storyteller. It fills in gaps, distorts details, and creates meaning. Cognitive psychology calls this perceptual framing. When you expect life to be hostile, you see threats everywhere. When you train the mind toward gratitude, you notice gifts in places you once overlooked. The Buddha's insight was radical for his time. If the mind shapes reality, then training the mind is not optional, it is essential. You would not drink from a dirty cup without washing it. Yet we so often drink the moments of our lives through a mind clouded by resentment, fear, and false assumptions. The mind is like a lens. When the lens is cracked, everything you see appears broken. When it is clear, the same world looks different. And while you cannot always change the world, you can polish the lens. This is why meditation is central in Buddhism. It is not about escaping life. It is about seeing life without the distortions of a restless or poisoned mind. Through stillness, you begin to notice the endless chatter of thought, the unexamined beliefs that pull you toward worry or anger, and in noticing them, you begin to loosen their hold. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius, though writing centuries later in Rome, echoed this truth in his meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Both Stoicism and Buddhism arrive at the same door. Peace does not come from controlling the world, but from mastering the mind that perceives it. But here's the challenge. Once you see how much your mind shapes reality, you also see how fragile your peace can be when your thoughts are left unchecked. It's not enough to occasionally think positively or to avoid unpleasant thoughts. You must cultivate a steady, disciplined awareness so that when life shakes, your mind does not shatter with it. And this brings us to a deeper question. If the mind is constantly shaping our experience and life itself is constantly changing, how do we live without clinging to a fixed picture of the world? The next insight offers the answer, one of the most beautiful and unsettling truths the Buddha ever taught. Everything changes, and that's the point. Everything changes, and that sets the point. There is an old Japanese proverb that says, "Even the cherry blossom falls." It is a reminder that beauty is inseparable from impermanence, that the same fragility that makes something precious is the reason it cannot last. The Buddha called this truth anicca, impermanence. To the untrained mind, impermanence feels like a thief, stealing our youth, our relationships, our moments of joy. But to the awakened mind, impermanence is not an enemy. It is the heartbeat of life itself. Think of a river. It flows not in spite of its constant change, but because of it. If the water stopped moving, it would cease to be a river at all. Life is the same. It is never static. It is always becoming and always passing away. Siddhartha saw this clearly after leaving the palace when he began to meditate under the Bodhi tree. Every sensation, every breath, every passing thought, all of it arose, lingered for a moment, and dissolved. And he realized there is no solid, unchanging core to hold on to. Everything is in motion, and because everything is in motion, life is alive. In the West, the philosopher Heraclitus came to a similar insight. You cannot step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. Impermanence is not just about the world changing, it's about you changing, moment by moment. But here's where the suffering enters. We cling to the illusion of permanence. We want our relationships, our health, our sense of identity to remain fixed. And so when life inevitably shifts, we feel betrayed, as if something wrong has happened, when in truth, it is the most natural thing in the world. In Buddhist practice, learning to accept impermanence is not meant to make us careless or detached. Or, on the contrary, it makes us more alive to the present moment. Because when you know something won't last, you savor it more deeply. The way you watch the sun set when you know it will be gone in minutes. The way you listen more carefully to a loved one's voice when you realize you might not hear it forever. Impermanence teaches gratitude. It shows us that clinging to a moment is impossible, but being fully in it is always possible. Modern psychology now supports this. Studies on well being show that people who accept change, rather than resist it, experience less anxiety and depression. They adapt more easily, and they're able to maintain meaning even during loss. It's not that they enjoy endings, it's that they understand endings are not an interruption of life, they are life. This insight also carries a quiet hope. If nothing lasts, then pain doesn't either. No heartbreak is eternal. No grief is without end. Like everything else, suffering rises and falls. So instead of asking, how can I make this last forever? We begin to ask, how can I be fully here while it is? That shift changes everything from how we love to how we work to how we see ourselves. And this brings us naturally to the next truth. Once you see that life is impermanent, you begin to recognize what truly matters. And for the Buddha, what mattered most was not power, not wealth, not even knowledge, but compassion. Compassion is strength. One afternoon, the Buddha was walking with a group of monks when they came across a man lying by the side of the road. He was ill, covered in sores, feverish, unable to move. The monks stepped back, uneasy. The smell was strong, and the man's body was filthy. The Buddha did not turn away. He knelt down, fetched water, and began to clean the man's wounds. The monks watched in silence. When he had finished, the Buddha said to them, "If you do not care for one another, who will? Monks, you have no mother, no father to care for you. If you do not tend to each other, who else will do so?" In that moment, he was showing something that many misunderstand. Compassion is not a softness that leaves you vulnerable. It is an act of courage to open your heart in a world where everything changes, where people may leave, where kindness may not be returned, is not weakness, it is strength. In Buddhist teaching, compassion is called karuna. It is not pity. It is not feeling sorry for someone from a distance. It is the ability to feel with another person, to let their suffering enter your awareness without turning away. And then, and this is key, to respond. The Buddha saw that suffering is not something that can be eliminated only by personal effort. We are deeply interconnected. My well being is bound up with yours. When one person suffers, it ripples outward. When one person heals, it also ripples outward. In the West, philosophers have wrestled with this too. The 18th century Scottish thinker David Hume argued that compassion, or what he called sympathy, is not a sentimental add on to human nature, but its very foundation. Modern psychology agrees. Humans are wired for empathy. Our brains mirror the emotions of others. We are built to connect. And yet, compassion in practice often requires swimming against the current of fear, indifference, or self protection. It sits easier to turn away. It sits easier to say, that's not my problem. But the Buddha understood that compassion is not just about helping others, it transforms the one who gives it. When you act from compassion, you align yourself with the flow of life itself. You become less caught in the small prison of me and mine. You begin to feel the vastness of being part of something larger. Compassion also has a way of dissolving the illusions that create division. When you see someone's pain up close, the categories we use to separate ourselves, race, class, religion, ideology, begin to matter less. You see the human being beneath the labels. But compassion is not only for others. The Buddha also taught metta, loving kindness, toward oneself. Without self compassion, the mind becomes harsh, critical, and closed. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. If you do not tend to your own suffering, your compassion for others will be thin, brittle, or transactional. This is why compassion is strength. It requires presence, courage, and a willingness to face what is uncomfortable. And in doing so, it expands the heart instead of shrinking it. From here, the path becomes clearer. Once compassion opens your heart, you begin to see that much of what we chase in life is unnecessary. The Buddha taught that when we live simply, we live more clearly. And that is the doorway to our next insight, the quiet power of simplicity. Simplicity brings clarity. There is a story that late in his life, the Buddha owned only a robe, a begging bowl, and a needle for mending. Everything else he had let go of, not because he despised the world's comforts, but because he understood a truth most of us spend our lives avoiding. The more we accumulate, the more we are tied down. We live in a time where the opposite message surrounds us: more possessions, more commitments, more distractions. We equate these with a richer life. And yet, how often do we find ourselves exhausted, not from scarcity, but from excess? Our homes are full, but our minds are cluttered. Our calendars are packed, but our hearts feel strangely empty. The Buddha taught that when you strip away what is unnecessary, life becomes lighter, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. It is like a pond that has been stirred up by too many disturbances. The more movement, the cloudier the water becomes. But if you let it rest, if you stop adding more, the water clears on its own. This is not about renouncing all comfort, nor about living in austerity for its own sake. It is about living deliberately, asking, do I really need this? Not only this in the sense of possessions, but also in the sense of obligations, habits, even thoughts. The Cynic philosophers of ancient Greece saw a similar truth. Diogenes famously lived in a barrel, owning almost nothing. For him, simplicity was not deprivation, it was freedom. And while his life was extreme, his message was clear. You cannot see the horizon if you are buried under your own possessions. In Buddhist practice, simplicity is a form of clarity. When you reduce the noise, the constant chasing, the endless consumption, you can finally hear your own thoughts. You can feel what matters most. You discover that peace is not something you buy or earn. It is what remains when you stop drowning it in excess. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on minimalism and well being show that reducing clutter, both physical and mental, lowers stress and increases focus. Our brains have limited attention. When that attention is pulled in too many directions, we lose the ability to be present. When we simplify, we reclaim our attention, and with it, our life. The Buddha's life itself was the ultimate illustration. By living simply, he was not weighed down by what he owned or what he feared losing. He could walk freely, speak freely, give freely. This is why simplicity is not a retreat from life, but an opening into it. And yet, even as we clear space in our lives, the Buddha reminds us of something even more powerful. Our actions in that space still matter. For everything we do plants a seed, and those seeds shape what comes next. Which leads us to the seventh insight, one that turns simplicity into responsibility. Your actions shape your future. Your actions shape your future. The Buddha once told his followers, to know our beings are owners of their deeds, heirs to their deeds. They originate from their deeds, are bound to their deeds, and have their deeds as their refuge. This is the essence of karma, not the watered down pop culture version that treats karma like instant cosmic revenge, but the deeper truth. Every action plants a seed, and those seeds grow into the landscape of your life. Think of a farmer. If he plants apple seeds, he will not harvest mangoes. If he plants thorns, he cannot expect roses. The same is true for our choices, the words we speak, the habits we keep, the way we treat others. This does not mean life is a perfectly fair balance sheet. Storms still come, droughts still happen. We cannot control every circumstance, but we can control what we plant and how we tend it. And over time, our field reflects our care or our neglect. In Buddhist thought, karma is not fate. It's not a divine punishment or reward system handed down from above. It's simply the law of cause and effect applied to our moral and mental lives. If we act from greed, anger, or ignorance, we create suffering for ourselves and for others. If we act from generosity, patience, and understanding, we create the conditions for peace. The Stoics spoke of this too, though in different terms. Marcus Aurelius wrote, your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought. The actions we take are not only external, they also form the habits of our mind. Every time you choose kindness over bitterness, patience over frustration, you are shaping the person you are becoming. Modern psychology confirms this in the study of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated behaviors. When you practice compassion, for example, you literally strengthen the neural pathways that make compassion more natural next time. Your mind becomes more aligned with your chosen values, not by accident, but through deliberate action. The Buddha's teaching on karma is both empowering and humbling. It reminds us that we are never entirely trapped. Each moment is a chance to plant a different seed, but it also removes the illusion that our actions exist in isolation. Everything we do has consequences, often far beyond what we can see. This awareness brings a quiet responsibility into daily life. It makes you pause before speaking words you cannot take back. It makes you consider the ripple effect of even small acts. A smile to a stranger, a harsh word to a friend, a moment of generosity when it would have been easier to turn away. And this leads naturally to the next lesson. If our future is shaped by our actions, then the most important moment to act is not tomorrow or next year. It is right now. The Buddha taught that the present moment is the only place where life actually happens. Which brings us to our eighth insight, the art of being fully present. Be fully present in the moment you are living. There's a well known teaching story about the Buddha and a man who came to him seeking advice. The man said, I am restless. My mind is always running ahead to the future or dragging me back into the past. I cannot find peace. The Buddha looked at him and asked, where do you live? The man, confused, replied, here, in this village. The Buddha shook his head gently and said, no, you live in your memories of the past and your fantasies of the future. Come back to where you are. This is the essence of mindfulness. Sati in Pali. It is not simply paying attention in a vague way. It is the deliberate act of inhabiting the present moment with full awareness, without judgment. We often think our lives are made up of years, but they are really made up of moments. Moments in which we are breathing, seeing, hearing. Yet most of these moments pass by unnoticed because we are mentally elsewhere, replaying old regrets, rehearsing imagined futures, trying to get to the next thing. The tragedy is that life is only ever happening now. When you miss the now, you miss life. The Buddha taught mindfulness not as an escape from the world, but as a way to see it more clearly. When you eat, you truly taste the food. When you speak, you are aware of your words and their impact. When you sit in silence, you feel the breath enter and leave your body, and you notice that for this moment, nothing is missing. Western thinkers have touched on this too. The philosopher Henry David Thoreau, living by Walden Pond, wrote, you must live in the present, launch yourself on every wave, find your eternity in each moment. It is the same invitation to step fully into the life you already have. Modern psychology and neuroscience agree. Studies show that people are happier when they are fully engaged in what they are doing, even if the activity is ordinary. Mind wandering, on the other hand, often increases anxiety and dissatisfaction. But mindfulness is not passive. It is not simply being aware. It is how you are aware. A mind full of judgment, impatience, or craving will not find peace in the present moment. Mindfulness asks you to meet each moment with openness, as if saying, this is enough, just as it is. Of course, the mind will still wander. That is its nature. The practice is to notice when you've drifted away and gently return over and over. Each return is a victory. Each return strengthens your capacity to live your actual life rather than the one in your head. And when you are present, even for a few breaths, something shifts. Colors seem brighter. Sounds become richer. The smallest things, the warmth of a cup in your hands, the play of light on a wall, feel quietly extraordinaire. From this presence, the next truth emerges naturally. When you are not constantly reaching for more, you begin to appreciate what you already have. This is the Buddha's ninth lesson: desire less, appreciate more. Desire less, appreciate more. One day, a wealthy merchant came to the Buddha. He said, I have everything I could want: fine clothes, gold, servants, a house full of treasures, but I am never at peace. I always want more. The Buddha replied with a simple question: if you had 2 mountains of gold, would you be satisfied? The man thought for a moment and admitted, no, I would want a third. This is the nature of craving. Tanha. It does not rest. It is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The Buddha saw that craving is not just about material possessions, it's the endless pursuit of experiences, recognition, control, even spiritual achievements. Craving is the restless voice in the mind that says, this is not enough. I am not enough. It convinces us that peace is always somewhere else, in the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase. But as soon as we arrive, the voice moves the goalposts. To desire less does not mean rejecting all ambition or pleasure. It means learning to see when desire has crossed the line from inspiration to imprisonment. When we are driven not by genuine need or joy, but by the fear of not having enough, we become trapped. The Buddha offered a different path: contentment, not complacency, but a deep gratitude for what is here. When we practice appreciation, we begin to notice the abundance already around us: the warmth of sunlight, the kindness of a friend, the simple satisfaction of a meal. The Greek philosopher Epicurus taught something similar. He distinguished between natural desires like food, shelter, friendship, and empty desires like wealth, status, or luxury beyond what is needed. Happiness, he said, comes from fulfilling the natural desires and letting go of the rest. Modern research on happiness echoes this wisdom. Studies show that gratitude practices, taking time to consciously notice and name what we are thankful for, significantly increase life satisfaction. It shifts the mind from scarcity to sufficiency. The irony is that when you desire less, you often enjoy more, because your attention is no longer fixated on the gap between what you have and what you want. It rests instead on what is already in your hands. And here's the quiet miracle: when you live with appreciation, you become harder to disturb. You no longer depend on endless acquisition to feel whole. Your sense of worth moves from the unstable world of possessions and status to the unshakable ground of presence and gratitude. From here, the Bodhisattva's path comes full circle, because when you free yourself from the tyranny of desire, you are better able to live at peace and to bring that peace into the world around you. Which brings us to the final lesson: peace begins with you. Peace begins with you. There's a story of a man who came to the Buddha angry and bitter. He said, the world is full of greed, injustice, and cruelty. I cannot find peace while others are suffering. The Buddha listened and then asked him, if you wish to see the world at peace, where will you begin? The man hesitated. I will try to change the people around me, he said. The Buddha shook his head gently. Begin with yourself. If you are angry, you will create anger. If you are at peace, you will create peace. This is not a call to withdraw from the world's problems. It is a reminder that the state of your own mind is the seed from which all your actions grow. If the seed is poisoned by resentment, fear, or hatred, then even your efforts to help will carry that poison forward. Peace is not something we wait to receive once the world changes. It is something we practice here and now, even in small ways. When you respond to harshness with patience, you plant peace. When you choose to listen instead of argue, you plant peace. When you meet your own failings with understanding instead of self condemnation, you plant peace. The Buddha knew that conflict begins in the mind, in the way we see ourselves and others. When we label, judge, and divide, we create the conditions for anger and violence. But when we train the mind toward compassion and understanding, we dissolve those divisions before they harden. The philosopher Lao Tzu in ancient China expressed this beautifully. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Modern psychology backs this truth. Studies on emotional contagion show that moods and attitudes spread within seconds, even without words. If you carry calmness, others feel it. If you carry agitation, others feel that too. The peace you cultivate within yourself has a real, measurable ripple effect. This is why the Buddha's path always comes back to the individual, not because the self is more important than others, but because you cannot give what you do not have. If you wish to be a source of healing in the world, you must begin by tending to the turbulence in your own heart. And so the question becomes, how do we carry these 10 insights, not as ideas, but as a way of living? That is where we turn in our conclusion to gather these truths together and see how they change the way we walk through life. Walking the path with the Buddha, we began this journey with a paradox. Life is precious, yet filled with suffering. The Buddha faced this truth not in theory, but in the raw reality of sickness, aging, and death. Instead of turning away, he looked directly at it, and from that gaze emerged a path, not of despair, but of liberation. Along the way, we have walked through 10 core insights, each a stepping stone toward a different way of living. Suffering is part of the human condition, but it is not the end of the story. We stop running from it and begin to work with it. Attachment is the silent architect of our suffering. We loosen our grip so love can breathe. The mind shapes reality. We polish the lens through which we see the world. Everything changes, and that sips the point. Impermanence is not loss, but the very heartbeat of life. Compassion is strength. Opening the heart is not weakness, it is courage. Simplicity brings clarity. By letting go of the unnecessary, we see what matters most. Your actions shape your future. Every choice plants a seed. The harvest is your life. Be fully present in the moment you are living. Life only happens here, in this breath. Desire less, appreciate more. Gratitude transforms what you have into enough. Peace begins with you. To heal the world, begin with the mind and heart you carry into it. Taken together, these are not abstract philosophies to admire from a distance. They are practices to live. They ask something of us: the courage to see clearly, the humility to let go, the discipline to train the mind, and the compassion to act with kindness. The Buddha Sep's path is not about perfection, it is about direction. walking each day a little closer to clarity, to freedom, to peace. Some days we will falter, we will cling, we will crave, we will get lost in old habits. But each moment offers the chance to return. So I leave you with this invitation. Choose one of these 10 insights, just one. And for the next week, let it guide your words, your choices, your thoughts. Notice how it changes you and how, in turn, it changes the world around you. Because the truth is, you are already shaping the world in ways you may not see. The smallest act of compassion, the quietest moment of presence, the simplest choice to let go rather than hold on, these ripple outward. They become part of the unseen web of causes and effects that make up the life of this world. And perhaps, years from now, someone will feel the warmth of your presence without even knowing your name and carry it forward to someone else. This is how peace spreads. This is how the path continues. So, walk gently, walk wisely, and remember, the path is not somewhere far away. It begins exactly where you stand.